Hey, thanks for having me. Again, I'm Perrin Lance. I need to adjust this mic.
All right.
The Executive Director of Chattanooga Organized for Action, a social justice community organizing nonprofit organization that's been in town relatively recently, since about 2010. And in addition to affordable housing, I'm going to be speaking about some other issues as well that are kind of tied in, right? But I want to thank everybody for being here. Speaking truth to power is oftentimes an unpopular job. It's kind of hard to do, but I really encourage and excited to hear everybody else's testimony as well. And I want to thank the Commission for having me here today. So, as opposed to just speaking about affordable housing needs, I want to talk about what my organization and a group that I work with called the People's Coalition for Affordable Housing as a triple crisis of housing, economy, and democracy. Chattanooga's future and well-being face a fundamental and existential threat in the form of a triple crisis of affordable housing, or the lack of it, especially for low-income people, equitable economic development and income inequality, and most importantly, a crisis of citizen input and meaningful involvement in the democratic governance of our city, especially as experienced in the part of marginalized communities. These crises do not exist in isolation. Rather, they are rooted together in the deep and historic trends of institutionalized racism, white privilege, classism, and the economic exploitation of marginalized communities, particularly of the local African American community and many others as well. The trends, as stated in this testimony, have taken decades of neglect and disinvestment to mature to their present status. No one individual, administration, or entity is responsible for them. They take centuries to develop. Specifically, and I'm part of the coalition that I'm working for, these trends have been, in large part, the result of the direction of state and municipal policy decisions towards utilizing city resources and services for the purposes of advancing the interest of business, industry, and capitalism at the expense of citizens and the community. These trends, when viewed in the historic context of centuries of marginalization and exploitation, have deviated the city of Chattanooga as an institutional entity from achieving and fulfilling its main purpose. It is a purpose that can be found in a quote near one of the city's bus terminals. It's near the Chattanooga Choo-Choo, where the little electric shuttles come out. It's one of the best quotes in the entire city on any kind of public piece of property. If you go to where the little CARTA buses come out, and you look all the way up at the top, it says, "The success of a city is in the service of its people." The success of a city is in the service of its people. We believe that a city should exist to meet the basic needs of human beings. As the city exists now, however, and as the facts shall show, serious threats are allowed to continue to exist that violate the basic civil and human rights of individuals and communities. These include the right to housing and the right to gainful employment. The city is prevented from meeting these basic needs because its government primarily serves to facilitate the interest of business, capitalism, and private enterprise at the expense of its people and the community. Economic exploitation, be it in the name of slavery from centuries ago, or in the threats by the former mayor of Chattanooga, Bob Corker, and its state senator, Bo Watson, against worker organization at the local VW plant, is the name of the game. If cities are meant to meet people's needs, then Chattanooga is not a city. It is a business racket that is disguised as a city. The following are various facts outlining the identified threefold crisis of housing, economy, and democracy. Chattanooga Organized for Action will be issuing a report, a gentrification report, that will be coming out towards the end of March or the beginning of April, and that will also include written testimony that will be submitted to the Commission as well. You can also find it online on our website. So I'm going to speak about some of these facts. First off, I'll be talking about housing insecurity. Half of all households in the urban core are economically burdened with housing costs. Now, what's the urban core? The urban core is from Hill City to St. Elmo, from the river to the ridge. It's what we kind of refer to as downtown, East Chat, West Side, South Chat. Half of all households are economically burdened with housing costs. But what does that mean? Well, the federal government has an easy way of identifying what that means. It means that if you are paying more than 30% of your take-home pay to the rent or the mortgage plus the utilities, then you are economically burdened according to your own housing costs. Now that's not counting transportation. The story gets worse for renters. 1 out of every 4 renters paid more than half of their income towards the rent. I'm going to say it again because I just want that to sink in. 1 out of every 4 people who rent an apartment or a house or a something in the urban core pay more than 50% of their paycheck to the rent. Existing affordable housing is on the decline. Chattanooga, I don't know if you guys will believe this, has the 3rd highest rising rents in the nation. First 2, New York City, San Francisco, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Hey, it's pretty crazy, I know. I don't know if that's something to be proud of. It's a bronze at least. So 3rd highest rising on the rent, all right? Half of the city's public housing stock has been demolished in the most recent decade, with the 2 largest public housing communities targeted for demolition within the next 5 years. And by that I mean College Hill Courts, which has approximately 440 units, I think, of affordable low-income housing, and East Lake Court, which has approximately the same number. So that's almost 1,000 units of affordable housing for low-income people that has a target right on its back, with no plan to replace it. Okay? While thousands sit on waiting lists for public and subsidized housing, city land use policies exacerbate the problem by favoring single-family homes and luxury apartments. Most of the people that live here in Chattanooga or call it home can attest to this personally from their own qualitative experience, right? I mean, how many of y'all have seen all of the high-rise towers or the condos being replaced and you're experiencing your own rent go up, right? So I want to talk about economic inequity next. 45% of all households in Chattanooga, not just the urban core, qualify as low income. 23% live below the federal poverty line. Communities of color are disproportionately affected, and some of these statistics are coming from some other reports that I'll also include links to. Nearly half of all black males in the urban core are unemployed. Black households make an average of $26,000 per year, while for whites it's $51,000. 60% of black children live in poverty, compared to 16.5% of white children. These inequities are caused in part by the prioritization of what I term as corporate welfare agreements that redistribute wealth from poorer communities to international corporations. So what are these things called? Well, these are what your city council passes as pilot agreements, or payment in lieu of taxes, tax abatements, so on and so forth. These allow for international corporations or regional corporations or just any old business, well, not a mom and pop, right? Businesses to locate to Chattanooga with no conditions, no promises, legally in writing. And you and I subsidize their existence, right? So they're called pilot agreements. Now, listen to this. Out of $32 million spent in city and county money towards the preparation of the Volkswagen site, less than 0.1% of those dollars went to women or minority-owned firms. It's about $56,000. It's pretty pitiful. These problems are exacerbated due to the outsourcing of city economic development and recruitment policies to the Chattanooga Chamber of Commerce, who actively promotes Chattanooga's workforce as highly exploitable. So what do I mean by that? In order to understand how economic development works in Chattanooga, you have to understand who it's been outsourced to. And it's been outsourced to a 501c3 and 501c6 organization called the Chattanooga Chamber of Commerce. Now, what's their job? Their job is to defend profit-making organizations to make a dollar, right? They don't have the interest of the community. They don't have the interest of you and I. They have the interest of business. But these are the people who are charged with doing economic development, right? So what they do is they secure public investment through pilot agreements, tax abatements, and tax increment financing schemes for corporations such as Volkswagen, Amazon, so on and so forth. But there's never any solid guarantee that a certain percentage of these jobs will go to the community, or a certain percentage of these jobs will go to on-the-job training positions for our ex-offenders, or any number of regulations. And to make the problem even worse, the regulation and enforcement of these pilot agreements are not housed in any independent body, or they're not housed within the city council or city government. The Chamber of Commerce basically says, well, we're going to make these pilot agreements, and we're going to evaluate them, so just trust us. Well, sometimes you got to trust but verify, as somebody once said. I don't trust them, but whatever. So, let's talk about gentrification. Chattanooga has 2 of the top 10 most racially gentrified zip codes, 2 of the top 15 most racially gentrified zip codes in the entire nation within the past decade. 4 people of color were displaced in favor of an influx of more affluent white residents through public and philanthropic policies that rewarded targeted developments to increase property values at the expense of equity towards indigenous populations. That's a lot. What does that mean? Real quick, if you go down Main Street, or what's properly referred to as the South Side, that by people that really don't know their history, you can go down Main Street and you can see how a combination of public and philanthropic resources were targeted toward an area to increase property value. Well, the unfortunate thing about it is that those resources were targeted toward that area, but it caused an increase in property values, right? A lot of these folks, a lot of the elders, senior citizens, and family living on fixed incomes, they can't compete with higher property values, higher property taxes, and they have to move. It's resulted in that zip code on the south side where all the nice hip kids go. It's resulted in that area moving from primarily an African American community to primarily a middle class affluent white community. And this isn't the result, it's not the result of accident, it is the result of policy. Policy matters. What the mayor proposes, what the city council proposes. And again, it's not just any one particular city council, it's not any one particular administration. This is the results of decades of disinvestment and neglect. But the fundamental problem in all of this is a lack of the ability for citizens to do something about it, right? Lack of citizens to hold people accountable. So part of the work of my organization, Chattanooga Organized for Action, is to work to organize residents, citizens, neighborhood associations, community organizations, what have you, and have them get in a room and say, okay, well, here's our strategy, here's what we want to do, here's what we would like to see. The communities that I work with, including the West Side Community Association, Lincoln Park, Avondale, so on and so forth, have come up with citizen-created solutions to each and every one of these issues, right? But the problem of it is that, and I'd say up to recently, we haven't even been able to get into the door or get these policies seriously considered. For instance, the affordable housing situation that I'm discussing, well, the West Side Community Association, which is entirely composed of tenants of public and subsidized housing, came up with a solution. It's called the Affordable Housing Ordinance. And the Affordable Housing Ordinance would act basically as an anti-gentrification tool, and it would state that for any of these planned unit developments, so for 10 or more units, there would have to be certain percentages of those units reserved for low-income people. But the problem of it is that this is an ordinance that was created by the communities themselves, It's taken us nearly 2 years to just get our first meeting with the mayor. So citizens are coming up with solutions to these. For instance, in terms of economic inequity, there is a resource tool called community benefits agreements. Community benefits agreements. These are a tool that would guarantee that if you're an economic entity and you're coming into my community, you have to guarantee the community, us, that you would get a certain percentage of these jobs set aside for low-income housing, a certain percentage of these jobs set aside for ex-offenders, so on and so forth. But again, as economic development has been outsourced to the Chamber of Commerce, the communities never get a chance to get at the table before the deal is done. Because the secrets of business are the secrets of the state in Chattanooga. It doesn't really end up working out so well for the communities. So other than that, I know that a lot of other people have some great stuff to say, and unless there's any questions, I'll go sit down and look for some more coffee. Anything?
I think we have a question. Do you all have any questions, commissioners? This says Carter has no weekend service to East Lake and no service to VW. With small changes by Carter, do you believe that this could change the housing and economic landscape?
Absolutely. My friend Valerie Redu just a little while ago was stating that about 26% of the workforce only has adequate access to public transportation. I think an immediate thing that could be done is to guarantee that there would be a bus route from all the public housing sites, from all the marginalized communities going to Volkswagen and Amazon around the clock. It would allow for people to have access to have an access to those jobs. But as it stands right now, the public subsidizes and incentivizes and finances the arrival of these corporations. If you pay sales tax, which everybody does, right? Here in Chattanooga, if you pay sales tax, you're providing for the financing for Volkswagen to come here, but you can't get a bus to go out there, you're being robbed. It's theft. Anything else? See you guys later.
Thank you.